I started at Tanglin. Well, I started in California first for about 5 years, then I was at Tanglin for a couple years, and now I'm here.
And I'm Michelle Hetland, and this is my 20th year in the district and my 13th at Meadowbrook. I have taught, this is my 4th year in this position. Prior to that, I've taught 1st and 2nd grade. Here, the longest, but Glen Lake and Gatewood also. And yeah, like I said before, I have 10-year-old twin girls that are in 5th grade, and it's our last year of elementary school there. And I thought I'd feel sad about it, but I don't. I'm really excited. It's our last carnival. To be honest, I'm so happy I don't have to do the carnival again. Let's do it. Their school is huge. There's 8 sections of every grade in their school, so it's a zoo. Anyway, and then I have a 7th grade daughter and my 21-year-old son, and yeah, we're just super excited to share the changes that we're bringing to our programming, and so we'll get started.
Well, and so this, when we change any types of programs, it actually starts a couple years before you see this now. So we've been talking and looking and reading and visiting other places for probably the last 3 years. We've done surveys to parents and teachers and so on. So there's kind of many things that have happened before we've gotten to this point here. We've kind of changed the flow, and you'll see more of a talent development model instead of gifted and talented enrichment specialists, and we'll talk more about that there. Oh, yep. So I love this one. It says, your proposal is innovative. Unfortunately, we won't be able to use it because we've never tried anything like this before. And background is really coming from our new superintendent. And she has really been talking about, she wants us to go out and try different things. She said, you are the ones working with the students and talking with each other. What kind of ideas do you have? And we're like, well, we have lots of ideas. And so she wants us to try them, and you will sometimes fail and you'll sometimes make it, and she is really comfortable with having us try different things and talking about it. She said dream big quite a lot, and so when we come up with, and we're looking at, well, what do we want the program to look like, and we're like, well, what do we want it to look like? We're like, well, this is kind of how. So that idea of dream big really stuck with us. This summer we had a grant through the Hopkins Education Foundation, and 4 of us went to Connecticut for a week in the summer to learn all about this new kind of different type of programming that we'll present to you. So the program is called the School-Wide Enrichment Model, and just reading from here, it's based on a broad conception of giftedness that focuses on many kinds of aptitudes, talents, and potentials for advanced learning, creative productivity that exists in all of the school populations. The goal is not to certify some students as gifted and then some as non-gifted, but to provide every student with opportunities and resources and encouragement necessary to achieve his or her maximum potential. In the language of the school-wide enrichment model, it's really labeling the services, not the students. So kind of changing that up quite a bit.
So kind of the foundation of that school-wide enrichment model is to look at these, they called it the 3 rings of gifted. So students with above average ability, students that are highly creative, students that have a strong ability to commit to a task and persevere through, and then centering around students that fall into that actual gifted category. And so that's what we're using as a baseline for how we're doing things this year, which is different because in the past, so under the school-wide enrichment model, they talk about 2 different kinds of gifted. And in the past, Hopkins and we here at Meadowbrook have primarily used a schoolhouse gifted model, which is if you know what we've done, that's based on their testing, reading levels sometimes, paper and pencil, their COGAT test, that kind of thing. And it didn't allow a lot of room to bring in these other things, these kids that are above average ability. You know, maybe they don't test as high in a test score, but we also see that they're so creative and they can develop this. Those kids were getting this. And then same thing, the kids that can just work really hard, that we were missing. So we're trying to add in, we still will have the schoolhouse gifted piece. Those kids are still going to be part of the program. We're adding in the creative, productive, gifted type of students is the goal. So with that,
So with that, looking at, because it used to feel like before that the only way they would be have enriched material is coming from like one of our 2 rooms or from us. When in reality, enrichment comes from like all of these places here. From the classroom, teachers provide most of it. We'll also work with them. We have the media specialist who we meet with him to do different projects and so on. The literacy coach works with all of us also, but it's not just like one or other, it's all of us together. And through here, well, this will be kind of touching a base on all of these tonight.
And so the reason this is sort of encompasses what we're trying to get at is our old model at Meadowbrook, if you weren't familiar, is we had a reading group and we had a math group. And we don't just have a world of good readers and good mathematicians. We have all of these different talented people, and so the goal is to help all of these types of kids develop their skill set to get on their path to what they're going to do in life. And so we'll come back to this a little bit. This is just a quick overview. So there's 3 pieces of a puzzle in this school-wide enrichment model. There's this type 1 exploratory general activities, type 2 is group training, type 3 is small group, and they all link together, and we're going to go in depth into each of them. But it's not unlike the RTI model, if you're familiar with that at all for school, where if a child needs extra help with their reading or math to get up to grade level, it's that same thing. And the goal is to get them moved in and out of these programs and meet their needs where they're at. So it's similar to what we've been doing just on the other end of the scale.
So the type 1, the first one, is just general exploratory activities. It could be when the classroom goes on a field trip, or it could be when they bring in a speaker. It could be anything they do outside too, anything that if we bring them to a museum or things like that, anything that just kind of expands their thinking and how they see different things. The type 2 enrichment is for the group. Michelle and I then will be going into each classroom throughout the year, 4 to 6 times or so, and we'll be teaching to that classroom a lesson, half an hour, 45 minutes or so. She'll be using we call it the PETS curriculum, but it stands for Primary Educational Thinking Skills. I'll be using more of the creative problem solving skills, and we actually then go into their classrooms to teach, and their classroom teacher will be there too. So then when we're working on certain activities, we can be teaching, and they could be observing or asking the students questions, helping out and things like that. The type 3 then is, after that whole group classroom, the type 3 is small group investigations or enrichment clusters. So small groups of students will then come to our rooms. We'll meet like once or twice a week for 6 to 8 units or so on some type of, what did I say? 6 to 8 units. 6 to 8 weeks. And it really depends on, it'll be on what we're all interested in. So it could be that we all come together and we find out that we're all interested in birds, and then maybe somebody else writes a play on it, somebody does some poetry on it, things like that. For my classes, we're producing a product for people to watch or see or expose them to that. I think that was about it. Okay. So then again, this comes back, and we'll really be flowing between, like, these two will go into the classrooms to teach unit, then we'll pull a small enriched cluster, then after 6 to 8 weeks, then we will go back to the classroom again to teach some more, and so we'll be going back and forth between these two all along while still that is happening within the classroom too. So then, the small group clusters then are for groups of students. So how is it decided who gets into these small group clusters? And we're going back really to those 3 rings there, having the above average, the creativity, committed to a task, are interested in doing that. Oh, you're going to next one. Yes, right.
So then the question always becomes, well, how do you form the groups? And so this is how it works, is about half the group are those kids that schoolhouse gifted, the kids that test really high with the test scores. And then the other half of the group is at this point in time, primarily the teacher nominations, and that's going to be based off of when we're in the rooms working with the students, the behaviors they see during our lessons, but also what they're seeing. Obviously, they know the students far better at a deeper level than we do. So that's where, and we've talked already with our teachers about what the creativity looks like that we're looking for. What is the task commitment? What kind of, school skills do they need to be successful in the group? And so that 50%, those kids that test really high will probably be in most groups. And then our goal is that other 50% is rotating, so that we're getting to see a lot of kids. So going back to that, helping everybody develop what they're interested in, what they're good at.
So, kind of touching base on all of these, this enrichment piece, the classroom visits, the clusters, the different activities here. Then we want to talk about the math acceleration. We'll talk about young scholars and then get to the guided reading. The math acceleration happens starting at grade 4. If students qualify, I see them every single day, and I'm their math teacher. And they then do 4th grade and 5th grade math. If they're in 5th grade, then they'll do 6th grade, and when they're in 6th, they'll do 7th. They'll always be they'll always be a year ahead. The scoring that we look at, there's about 5 different areas here, and all are weighted differently, so they can have different scores on different things. Some students do really well on the problem-solving test, but maybe their MAP scores aren't as high, or maybe some students' MAP scores are high, but the other are low. And so it's a combination of all those points that qualify them. And this is the same throughout the district here. So that's why sometimes when students, they take that MAP test on the computer and they know their score and they tell their other friend their score and they're like, well, how come they're in accelerated math and I'm not? I got a higher score than them. There's lots of different scoring that goes into that too.
And then the other piece under umbrella is Young Scholars, which is a nationwide program. It's not in every district. In Hopkins, we are lucky to have it here at Middlebrook and at Eisenhower. And it is meant to catch kids. It's happening here in Hopkins nationwide. When you get into, particularly in junior high and high school or middle school, the accelerated classes, students' population does not match the district population. And so we're missing in those accelerated classes, we're missing students of color and students of poverty primarily. And so Young Scholars is a targeted program to help kids at this level develop the skills that they need to hopefully go on and take these accelerated, more challenging classes. It starts in 1st grade. My first group that I started with, I see them all every year, and so that first group is in 4th grade now. I'll be starting a new 1st grade group, and then I have 2nd and 3rd. The curriculum I do with them mirrors what I'm doing with my pull-out groups typically. So we're doing the same thing. They have the community aspect together, seeing themselves as a group, supporting themselves through it, and seeing themselves ultimately as scholars.
So just kind of moving through the things, but the math acceleration, I forgot to mention that math acceleration, there's many different entry points for that. It's not just if you are in 4th grade, then that's it for you. We are always looking at you're testing all the different time the students are, and so after they take their fall maps again, I'll go back and I'll look at all the data again. And so there might be new students that join us, or after the 4th graders take their COGAT again, then that varies on the score, and then I go back and redo them again. And so there's always different entry points for that. It's not once you're in, that's that. So I wanted to mention that.
And the guided reading, yeah. So that's the last piece of it, so that's a shift for us, is we're not doing that pull-out reading group that we've done in the past. We're moving into these enrichment clusters. So the literacy and guided reading is, we now have this full-time literacy coach that is spending a significant amount of time with each teacher, and the new curriculum is a very deep and rich program. So the goal there is that partnering with us, with the literacy coach and with the classroom teachers, that all the kids are getting exactly what they need from a literacy standpoint at their level every day, rather than just seeing us twice a week for half an hour. So that's a shift. We are definitely partnering with the teachers, and I think the other thing, and we said this to staff too, is that I think there could be this, oh, there's not a reading group. But what we want you to know, everybody to know, is that we weren't doing a lot of reading when we were doing that reading group. It was focused on the critical thinking skills. And so we're doing that exact same thing, just with a wider variety of topics in these enrichment groups. It's all the same idea behind our teaching. It just has a different look to it. And then the most important one probably is we start on something new.
Oh, starting something new. This is really, wouldn't it be awesome if success was like that? But this is really what it looks like. And so trying new things, and which is exciting, but it looks like this, and sometimes you think you have something figured out, and you're like, oh, I forgot about that, and you're like, oh, and then you go back and do it. And so really, this is actually what we tell our students too. And so we started out here this summer, and then now we're kind of like here, but we're still moving forward. And ever, if you have questions, just email, call. I would say call, but sometimes I can't see when the light on my phone is on, so email is a good one. But just always ask. And the teachers, we tell the teachers that too. If they have questions, just ask us. So that's all, but thank you. I don't know if there's any questions we can answer. Either one, yeah.
Okay, for sort of a twitchy question, at what level does actual testing start? At what grade?
Testing
to get into the math.
The math acceleration, that is starting at the end of 3rd grade with the problem-solving test that spring.
Okay, so
and then we look at their MAP scores from that spring, and their MCA scores from that spring.
So will there be math pullout or thinking skill pullout at the lower levels, and how will you evaluate for that, or is there now only one pullout, and that's the special interest group?
So math will still, so at the primary level, at K2, primary there will still be a math, you're right, thinking skills type of group. It will still be based on, it'll be similar to my lessons. I go in, and I've always gone in and taught group lessons at each grade level at the primary level because it's not formally identified. So that will continue. So there will still be 2 separate groups that I'm pulling. Does that answer your question?
Sort of based on your evaluation then?
Yep, and that's partnering with the teacher, and it's using that 3 rings of gifted, so we're looking for those kids that have that creativity and task commitment and ability to work through what we're doing.
But that, yeah, and then you're in there many times
Yes.
throughout the year. So again, it's not just one time and that's it. It could be for that lesson that really clicked for that student and definitely need enriching in that area, but for maybe like something else, it doesn't so much. So groups will switch.
Who's the literacy coach when you mentioned up there?
She's new to the district. Her name is Laura Blackledge.
Oh, okay.
She was in the position of being a literacy coach for the Robbinsdale district for many schools.
So can you describe a little bit, like, what is she doing with the classroom teachers on, or what is that?
I think that might be you, Rita.
She works with them on implementing the new literacy curriculum, strategies and understanding the expectations. She models, she's in the classroom, she's actually doing teaching. And so we have had a literacy coach here. Amy Duffy, I think, was our first literacy coach a long time ago when she was here the first time around. But we had like a half time, then it went up to like 0.6. And so this is the first time that every school in the district of the elementary, actually junior high, 7 too now, have literacy coaches who work with the teachers and be in the classroom. I think it's 80% of the time in the classroom. She could be teaching a small group in a classroom. She could model lessons. We have many possibilities.
I might have missed this, but are we the only one in Hopkins doing this? Or are there other schools?
So what's happened is we always used to be the same. And about a couple years ago, that's when we started talking about, well, we have to be similar to all of the elementary schools, but all of our elementary schools aren't alike. So we're similar in that we are providing enrichment services, and that there is full-time people at each school. And the math is the same, so some of those things are the same, some classroom visits are the same. We're similar but not exact. Go ahead.
So you talked about the Young Scholars Program, and they are kind of pulled out but given the same curriculum as some of these those other programs. Are they do they work together too, or are the Young Scholars always kept kind of?
So they've been separate before. I think in part of the messiness, I think the goal is to, we think
Okay.
there's going to be some overlap, is the hope.
Alright then,